Hey
Okay, wait,
guys, so I have Dr. Jenn on with me today again. It was such a pleasure speaking with Dr. Jenn a few days ago about benzo withdrawal, and we really went into depth in terms of how to manage benzo withdrawal, the symptoms, and a lot of other topics that we got into. And Dr. Jenn is a benzo survivor herself. She went through benzo withdrawal for many years, which you could also go back to her story in her last video. And she's also an anxiety coach. She's helped me with my anxiety. I've had a few sessions with her. She's doing consultations. She has an excellent website with plenty of resources on there as well. So I highly recommend you guys check that out. My name is Scott, as some of you guys might know me on my channel. I am also a benzo sufferer. I cold turkey benzos about 5 years ago. So I had a lot of, terrible years going through benzo withdrawal, as did Dr. Jenn. And I'm also still currently tapering Cymbalta. So not quite healed yet, but almost there, feeling a lot better. And today we kind of wanted to get into how to cope with anxiety going through benzo withdrawal. So, Dr. Jenn, this is kind of your specialty, and you've definitely helped me with my anxiety on various occasions. So, um, I'll let you take it away from there.
great. Thanks for the introduction. Appreciate it. So many people write and ask me, how do I cope with this anxiety? And we have to remember that anxiety and benzo withdrawal is normal. So let's just first normalize it. And we need to kind of look at it through the lens of what's happening to our brain and body. When we take the medication in a large population of people, it downregulates the GABA receptors. We don't know what else it may or may not do. There's not a whole lot of science. I mean, there's so many medicines that are out on the market. When you go and look, how does it work? There's just this big question mark. People just don't know. So there's not a ton of research that I'm aware of exactly how the drug affects other things in the brain and the body. But we're pretty confident that it downregulates those GABA receptors. And the GABA, that's the inhibitory system. It's the brakes. The opposite is glutamate. So when you damage the inhibitory, the calming system, it means that we're going to have anxiety because the threat detection circuitry is going to be misfiring because it doesn't have that calming effect. And we believe that a lot of symptoms come from the downregulated GABA receptors, but we also know there's more to the story, as you and I discussed, in our theories about the gut and whatnot. But let's just work with this one small little area and say, we'll just focus on GABA, that you don't have this calming ability. So even people who've never had a day of anxiety in their life, maybe they were put on it for a twitch or a sprained muscle, a backache, when they go to get off, or even intolerance withdrawal, when they're still on the drug, they can experience anxiety. So it's a chemical anxiety. It's like if you broke your leg and your leg hurt, it's because you have a broken bone. So it's, people get scared and think, oh my gosh, I was put on the drug for anxiety and now my anxiety's coming back. Well, not necessarily. It very well just could be that it is just the nature of the beast, so to speak, that we're going to have anxiety because we don't have that ability to calm ourselves. So first, let's just normalize it. Know what it is. It's a dysregulated nervous system, and it doesn't mean that things going on in the world really are scary. We're just perceiving them as scary. So we have to remember that the anxiety that we're feeling, it's a feeling, not a fact. It's a fact that we're feeling it, but I think you follow where I'm going with this, that so we feel all of this fear and anxiety, and it can be a chemical feeling, it can be a worry. I mean, people manifest it in different ways and different degrees. Sometimes mine was just a chemical anxiety that was uncomfortable, and other times it was ice cold terror. And I do mean ice cold. I had heard that phrase before in my life, never really knew that it was real. Like ice would just go through my veins. It was it was very uncomfortable sensation. So we know that there's all these different degrees of it, but we have to remember, Scott, that what we're feeling is just a dysregulated nervous system. There is no saber-toothed tiger in the room ready to pounce. So so that somehow can help a little. I mean, it's still very difficult to feel all of those uncomfortable feelings, but just knowing at the core of it, we are safe. Dr. Stephen Porges, who's the father of polyvagal theory, reminds us that safety is the prescription for everything. So, one of the ways that we can cope is to keep coming back to this present moment and reminding ourselves that we are safe. Now, just that reminder isn't going to magically make those feelings go away, because we have to remember we're talking about coping with anxiety in benzo withdrawal. Coping. I've had people write and say, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, but I still have the anxiety. And it's like, I know, because cope doesn't mean cure. These things that we can offer and suggest for you to cope with it, they're not going to cure it. It's not going to magically pack up its bag and leave. But it does mean that we can turn the volume down some on our suffering or our preoccupation and focus on it. So let's first and foremost, let's normalize it. Anxiety is normal in benzo withdrawal. We are safe. Our feelings are based on a dysregulated nervous system, not on the, usually, on the facts of what's really going on around us. It's an internal dysregulation. And that we can find ways to cope, but coping is not curing. So that's kind of how I want to start things. So I'm going to ask you, I'm curious, did you have a lot of anxiety? I already know the answer to that, but we'll let you tell your story. We'll let you tell your
Oh my
story.
God.
And
Wow.
I know, right? And how did you cope?
I wouldn't even know where to start with that. My anxiety, as far as I'm concerned, was purely chemical.
Hmm.
I never really considered myself to be much of an anxious person before going through benzo withdrawal. Um, so when my anxiety would come on, I would get this, and it was not circumstantial at all. But there were so many things that were tied into that, whether it be health anxiety, and having this doom-like feeling. And one thing I never got used to is when that anxiety would be paired up with the physical symptoms, and that would sort of manifest in sort of panic attacks sometimes for me. So
Hmm. Hmm.
having the vision problems, having the brain fog, having the whatever else on top of this crazy chemical anxiety just made it 10 times worse. So there were some things that I would do if things got really bad. So um I would I try to work on CBT for a long time, which is cognitive behavioral
Hmm.
therapy. And so one lesson that I was given from my therapist at the time was to do cognitive behavioral therapy with cue cards. So, and this might sound kind of silly, but over time it actually did help me quite a bit. So I would write out, you know, uh, sort of these cue cards saying like, what are my worst fears? And then below that, I would have um, kind of a positive spin on that. Like, if I'm afraid of something, I would write under it, why are you afraid of this? You don't have any evidence that this is the case, that you're about to die or whatever. All your medical tests are normal. There's no evidence to believe this, and you are healing. Or I just write some positive affirmation with that as well. And so every time I went to that negative part of my brain, I would sort of pull out my cue card and just like read it and read it and read it.
Hmm.
Now, when you're in the throes of akathisia,
Hmm.
luckily I only experienced really bad akathisia for 2 months. You know, it's very hard for me to tell people what to do in that case, because it's very the only thing I could think of is that try to distract yourself any way you possibly can. I don't care if that's just like, you know, maybe have some some TV show on that doesn't require a lot of brain power, something you've watched a million times already. Have some very light background music, like try to talk with your friends or anything you could do to distract yourself and just wait for that period to pass. What else? Yeah, really that's it, you know. I mean, there's a lot of things that help with my anxiety in terms of obviously we've touched on this, and like changing my lifestyle, changing my diet, stuff like that, but doing meditation.
Mhm.
But it's still, to this day, you know, I still have a hard time getting used to it. It's not one of those things that I'll be honest with you, it's not one of those things that for me, the anxiety sort of got a lot easier to cope with over time, and the symptoms. Um, you know, I don't want to scare people, but you know, for me, like the more time that went on, it almost got like harder to cope with it, despite having those coping mechanisms. And I'm just trying to be real about this. I'm trying not,
Yeah.
I don't want to scare people, whatever. I'm an extreme case because I'm also taking Cymbalta, you know, and I have such terrible gut issues. And I had a lot of health issues leading up to this anyway. So I'm definitely a different case than most people. But, you know, it's just, for me, it's just, I never got used to it. I never got used to the brain fog. I never got used to the symptoms. And I have a lot of people saying to me, well, it's been 5 years. Aren't you used to it by now? Like you should just sort of slide off your back. And for me, it's kind of been the opposite, you know. But when I do have my good days are better. Like my world is better than it's ever been. I'm happier than I've ever been, to be honest with you. My circumstances have never been better in my life. So when I make it past this and I've tapered off the Cymbalta and I'm completely healed, I'm going to enter into a life that I think is going to be the best version of myself possible. So that's the huge gain from all this terrible experience. But anyways, I'm ranting too much. So I'll let you
No,
continue.
no, you're fine.
I
And that's
you'll come to know I rant a lot. So
it's
what I do.
okay. All right. And it's a great segue into the reminder to tell people that this really does come to an end, and we do walk into these big, beautiful lives. There is something about this suffering for most of us, if we keep our heart opens and we really, I think, embrace those four cornerstones of well-being, that we are the best version of ourselves. I'm 63, I'm a grandmother, and
Yeah.
I never thought in my life that I would be this happy, this healthy, this calm, because I was put on a benzo for pretty severe anxiety
Mm.
and panic. And then on top of everything, the Loma Prieta earthquake, I was pregnant with twins in the hospital at Children's Hospital up in San Francisco. Observation, I'd been on bed rest for 17 weeks trying to get them into the world, and had a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old at home. I mean, it was so much stress. And then after the earthquake, the floodgates opened up, and I just could not stop having flashbacks about my childhood sexual abuse of the pedophile in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
So I was in really bad shape when they put me on a benzo.
Mm.
Scott, I don't have any of that anxiety. I mean, I really don't have any of that. And I don't have panic attacks. So I want people to know that if you were put on the drug for anxiety and now, you're intolerant or you're tapering or you're off and you have anxiety, please do not let your nervous system, remember, state drives story. The state of our nervous system fuels and flavors our thoughts and feelings. It's going to be there, maybe the thought, but don't allow it to get into the point that you believe it, that this is who you are, not medicated, that
Mm.
you're always now going to be anxious without a pill. I was terrified that was going to be my story. It's like, shit, I've gotten off this stuff. And you hear in the groups, you can't ever get back on, the receptors won't take the drug. And I just thought, I'm just doomed to this broken life and I'll never be able to function. So completely not the truth. I had the biggest, bravest, boldest, juiciest life I could ever imagine. And I don't drink and I'm not on any psych meds. In fact, I just don't take anything even over the counter.
Mm.
And if I can accomplish this by rewiring my nervous system and healing from all this, anybody can. So great segue for that. there was something else you said that that I wanted to say something about. Now I forgot. You mentioned
Yeah.
a lot of
Well, I
a
have
lot of
another
good.
question for you if you want to come back to that, if you can think about it.
Yeah,
But
well, I got my notes from my support group.
oh,
People
okay.
had given me some things they wanted to share with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so one thing, another question I just sort of had for you. I know we're trying to keep this somewhat brief, but you know, I always found it very devastating. You know, a lot of people get windows, whether it be for a few hours or a few days, maybe even a week, right? And then they'll go back into a wave again. And you know, it's almost like you almost get your expectations up. Maybe I've
Right.
healed, you know, and it's and then it could be so discouraging, especially if, like yourself, 6 years later or whatever, you get this horrible setback and you're back into the throes of it. So how do you deal with that when you think you're healed, or you feel like, you know, you've had a good window and you're doing well and your life is back on track, and then all of a sudden the waves come crashing back down? Do you feel like, you know, like I know for myself, in times like that, I felt hopeless and really frustrated, think I'll never get better. This is never going to end. So how do you deal with that?
It's a great question. Yeah, because I had my first setback at 3 years off. And then I really was almost well. I had driven across country to go visit my parents on our family farm in northeastern Georgia. I'm in the San Francisco area, and that was a long drive by myself. So, I mean, I just really felt like, yeah, I'm on the top of the world. I mean, I had a few little lingering things, but minor. So to, fall back into the snake pit, that's what I call it,
Mm,
was hard. And I have to admit, the first few days, because I was bedridden. I mean, I couldn't walk. I, my symptoms were horrific. And so the first few days, all I did was curse God. I was so angry. Like, you've got to be effing kidding me, God. Like, really? I haven't suffered enough? Like, are you really, like, was just beside myself. And then I had to just take a deep breath and go, okay, what is it that you tell all your clients? You've got to walk your talk. You've got to work your program. You know everything you need to do. Now do it. And so that's what I did. And slowly, I recovered, and recovered perfectly. It just took some time. But that first initial response was totally devastated, angry. For me, it was just anger and rage. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I felt like life was so cruelly unfair. But then I also knew to stay there meant I was not going to be helping my nervous system heal. So I allowed myself that time. It was a few days. And then I said, okay, let's, put on your big girl panties and let's do what we need to do. Um, yeah, and it was just day by day, and some days it was just minute by minute. But at least this time I knew you don't go to a psych ward. you
mm,
know, I did go and get some blood tests just because I wanted to rule out that not something else wasn't happening. And of course, one of the doctors wanted to convince me I now had developed some real severe mast cell activation issues and this and that. And I said, nope, nope, this is just benzo withdrawal. And of course they look at you cross-eyed like, you're just crazy. It's been so long. And I said, appreciate your, but no. Um, so, all the blood tests and stuff showed there was nothing nefarious. They couldn't say that I had anything. So it was like, well, it just then had to be. So, and then you just go from there. It's just day to day. But I have to say, because I know my story scares people, not most people don't have setbacks. I mean, people do have windows and waves within their recovery process, but to get well or almost well and have a setback, that's not the norm. It's definitely not the norm to do it twice. And I help people learn how to manage as they're coming out of benzo withdrawal to where they're not overdoing things and they're pacing themselves better so that they're even setting themselves up more, stacking the cards in their favor to avoid a setback. But um, yeah, my story's kind of unusual in that, but it just boils down to the way we cope with everything: radical acceptance, patience,
mm,
radical gratitude, which I know is hard at
yeah.
times, and finding the things that focusing on what we can do as opposed to grieving what we can't do. and just trying to find ways to really live in that fourth cornerstone of love well, patience, kindness, acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, service to others, curiosity, awe, wonderment. Those things, really living in that, help invite our nervous system to move over into a parasympathetic ventral vagal response where the deep healing can take place. If we stay angry or despondent, and we keep watering that plant, so to speak, we're not giving our body the opportunity to get into a position to really do deep healing. I mean, you'd still heal, but you're gonna, I think, stack the cards way in your favor if we can manage to do that love part of the cornerstone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found for myself, and this might sound a bit silly, but I was saying before, like in some ways it gets harder, but you also develop this kind of mental toughness. And
Yes.
I would have this kind of where I would tell myself, you know, almost like I'm speaking to some kind of, you know, um, supernatural force or something, and I would just say, bring it on, like bring it on, like, I'll curse and I'll say, fuck you, bring it on. I've dealt with enough shit in my life. I've had all sorts of terrible trauma. I've had this and that, this and that. If you think you can't take it, you don't know who you're messing with. Like, I would take that sort of really mental toughness and use that to help overcome my waves as well. It's kind of like inviting the devil into your house, and it kind of made it easier for me in a way. And I don't know if other people have done that, but you've done that too. Yeah.
I
So
did. Yeah, there were times when I can feel it starting to wash over me. I don't know if you ever had that experience. I know some of my clients do. Like I could just be feeling fairly, tolerable, and I can't even describe it. I just knew it was coming, and it was just so horrible. And I would just clench my jaw and say, "Bring it, mother."
yeah.
Well, won't say that on air. But yeah, I mean, it was just like sometimes that's an okay stance. And when I
Right.
say
Using
acceptance,
anger in a way, right?
yeah, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, and when I talk about acceptance, I'm not saying roll over, expose your jugular, and be a doormat.
Mhm.
That's, you know, that's that's not acceptance. That's defeat. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about being defeated. I'm just practicing acceptance, which is a
Yeah.
little different. Um, I wanted to just mention some of the things here if I
Sure. Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
I was talking to my group, my Mornings with Jenn support group, and I asked people, how do you best cope? And so, of course, these are probably things that most everybody does, but, deep, slow breathing, or, opposite nostril breathing, meditation, playing word games, Scrabble, and cryptogram puzzles,
Mhm.
acceptance, surrender, distraction. Distraction's huge. And under distraction, you can also put in learning a new skill or learning anything new, because when we're learning something, all those neurons have to be making new connections, and the spotlight's off of our suffering and feeling the anxiety in our body. And there's Mark Criley on YouTube. He teaches drawing. So I learned how to draw following him. You can knit, create, crochet, sew, do latchik rugs. Using fine motor control is a wonderful way to calm down the nervous system. Singing and humming and chanting, those are great things to help relieve some of that internal pressure and anxiety, but that also helps strengthen our vagus tone, the vagal tone, our vagus nerve. So those things are good. Doing jigsaw puzzles, origami. We've got a gentleman who does amazing origami. Again, that fine motor control. Diamond painting. There are those little gemstones that it's almost like paint by numbers.
Mhm.
Anything that's repetitive like that, that's very, very soothing for the nervous system. And I wanted to talk a little bit about health anxiety, because it's really big in benzo withdrawal. Because
Yeah.
again, state's driving story. So everything's going to be tainted with and colored with doom and gloom and catastrophe. So, I mean, I can remember just looking at a normal, age spot. Oh my God, when did that show up? I bet it's a melanoma, I'm gonna die. And that spot had been there like for a long time. But it's just crazy how our mind will just go to something and it's like a pit bull. It just won't let it go and it'll roll down the hill like a snowball gathering speed. What if, what if, what if, what if, until we just, we've created this horrific story about what's going to happen to us. So that's really common in benzo withdrawal. So one of the things we need to do is just observe the storyteller. That's all. Just observe the storyteller. It's our nervous system fueling that story. Come back to the present moment as much as possible and remind ourselves that we are safe. I love that you had your affirmations. I use little 3x5 and 4x6 cards myself to have them on my bathroom mirror, the back of my door, my purse, my pocket, with all sorts of affirmations.
Yeah.
And just the reminder, this is all this nonsense is just benzo withdrawal. So one of the affirmations that I do in my support group and with all my clients, it's just very simple. I am safe, I am healing, I will recover. As those are facts. You are safe in benzo withdrawal.
Mm.
You are healing. You are going to recover. Now, if you've cold turkeyed, especially off of a high amount, your safety, that might be something to look at, because we know not to cold turkey these, then you could have a seizure or something. But
You
by
and I
and
know
large,
all too well.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, well, I was cold turkey. Please, with my doctor who gave me medicine, so I didn't have a seizure, but that's not the way to get off of it. And then just briefly, because I really don't want the video to go too long. Social anxiety. Even if you've never had social anxiety in your life, we can develop that in benzo withdrawal. As State's driving story, we're just kind of walking raw nerve of fear of practically everything for a while until our nervous system repairs and calms down. So one of the things that helped me was to remember that everybody in the universe is dialed into the same radio station, WIFM. What's in it for me? So knowing that it was easy then for me to be around somebody, because even though if I thought they might be judging me, I knew in my heart they're dialed into what's in it for me. So they're over there wondering the same things I'm wondering. Do they like me? Do I fit in? Blah, blah, blah. So when you realize that everybody's got these same normal desires and fears of acceptance and love, do you like me? Am I safe around you? When you realize that they've got that reality going on just like you do, it levels the playing field. And so then it makes it easier to utilize the things that we know that make us just magnets for people and their friendship and their love and caring. And that is curiosity and learning. I mean, learning some listening skills. Curiosity is awesome. People love to talk about themselves. So if you're anxious in a group or around people, just keep asking them, what are you going to do for Christmas? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. People love to talk about themselves. They're never going to know, if you've got the shakes or anything else, no big deal, because people don't remember what you did. They remember how you made them feel. So that's a great way to deal with social anxiety. But I have to say, if it is so intense for you that being in social situations is too much, it's okay to just say right now, I can't handle being around people. There was a time when I couldn't even have my very best friend come over, because just her walking into my house, I was just flooded with dread and fear and terror. And I said, I'm sorry. I can't, I just had to be alone for a while. And that's okay too while we're healing. But I do hope that people will be able to utilize some tools so that they can be a little bit more comfortable in social situations. Now, remember, coping isn't curing. Just because you utilize some of these things doesn't mean you're.
Sorry,
But
Jen,
hopefully,
you were very muffled there for a second. Can you just repeat that last bit?
oh yeah, I just wanted to remind people that coping isn't curing,
Yeah.
that, you're still going to have the anxiety, but, but the volume's going to be hopefully turned down.
Yeah, that's an excellent tip. So I think we'll maybe just leave it for at that for today. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I just think generally, just please know this: if you're in benzo withdrawal and you're really suffering with anxiety, and you've dialed into my channel or Scott's channel to try and get some help, know that anxiety is normal. I know it's uncomfortable. Do your best to practice anything that's going to help you distract, but normalize it in your mind. Know that you really are safe. But above all else, just keep going. No, I promise you it's going to go away. It really, truly is going to go away. This is not the rest of your life. Even if you came to the party with a bit, with anxiety before you were put on your benzo like I did, that does not mean that you are going to suffer with anxiety all the rest of your life. I promise. So just hold on, do what you can do to get through this, and I promise you will get to the other side.
Yeah, and I'll just say that, part of that anxiety, and I think we're going to get into this on our next video, but part of that anxiety is dealing with, I don't know if bullying is the right word, but getting a lot of judgments and what people might perceive as bullying, or maybe it is actually bullying, right? From doctors and from perhaps from other people as well. But I think we're sort of just going to focus more on sort of doctor bullying a little bit and how that could create a lot of anxiety for people as well. Because I know it did for me. When you go to the doctor's office and they sort of treat you like you're crazy, and you have a something wrong with your brain or whatever else, right? So that's definitely a source of anxiety for most of us, because I think most doctors aren't really receptive to the idea of protracted benzo withdrawal, right? They're just kind of, they sort of, what's the word for it? They cast aspersions in terms of like, oh, this is, it's not benzo withdrawal, it's something else. Something's wrong with you. You're a stressful person. You just have some kind of terrible problem. My doctor said to me, she goes, maybe you're just crazy. She said that word for word.
God,
She's like,
I'm
have
so
you ever
sorry.
considered maybe you're just crazy? She said that word for word, right? And I came home from that doctor's visit and I was just littered with anxiety. I could sleep that night because I was so angry
Sure,
about it. Right. So I know
sure.
this happens. I'm not alone. This happens to most people. So I think that's going to be a really great discussion to get into with you.
Yeah, that'll be our next topic. And there is so much to be said about anxiety. We didn't even really get into, as you just, brought the topic to light, about the doctors don't understand this. And, we are told and we're given so many different diagnoses. And so this interview is just a quick,
Mhm.
I don't know how quick, but
Quickish.
quickish.
Yeah.
um, there's still so much more to be said about it. But yeah, the medical component part, yeah, they don't understand protracted withdrawal, but they don't even really understand the damage and the dangers of benzos. And I have helped psychiatrists go through this. I have helped internists, pediatricians, um, all sorts of medical, therapists,
Mhm.
therapists by the dozens. I've helped go through this, and they all say the same thing. I had no idea. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So I think, as time goes on, this information will, become more common knowledge, just like, the opioid, the dangers of those became more common knowledge. But until then, we just have to pull together and share anecdotal knowledge and help one another along. But yeah, like you said, I had doctors tell me all sorts of things. I had one totally try to convince me that I had just one of the worst anxiety disorders she had ever seen, and there was no way it could be from the benzos.
Mhm.
And it's hard, to have a medical professional telling you that. And but I just had to do my best not to believe it. And clearly it wasn't true, because I don't have I don't have my pre-existing
Yeah,
anxiety, and I don't have panic attacks. Well, I
exactly.
look
Yeah.
forward to getting together next time, and we will
Yeah.
talk about Dr. Bullying. And I think bullying, it's a harsh, strong word, but I think sometimes it's the right word. Maybe not in all cases, but I think it is the right word. So I look
Mm.
forward to that discussion.
Yeah, me too. So just quickly before we go, if you could just let people know where they could find you if they want to do like a consultation with you or reach out to you.
Oh, yeah, sure. I have a website, benzowithdrawalhelp.com. If you are wanting to get off your benzo or off your benzo and you need some support, I do one-on-one consultations, coaching Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. I'm sorry, that's my support group days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. I have a live support group that we meet about 45 minutes to an hour on a Facebook group. It's a paid support group. It's an awesome group. I love everybody in it. That's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 o'clock Pacific time. And then for people that are having anxiety and they have not yet gone on a medication and they're trying to avoid that, and I'm trying to help them avoid that and to learn how to overcome anxiety naturally, that website is thrivewithdrjen.com.
All right, great, Dr. Jen. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm really looking forward to our next talk because I think it's going to be interesting.
Me too, Scott. Thank you so much for hosting. You're a wonderful interviewer, and
Oh,
I really appreciate it so much. And I know all the viewers really appreciate your style and your candor and your demeanor as well. So thank you.
okay, well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, guys.